Hello, everyone. I'm David Smith, Chief Marketing Officer for CloudFrame. Welcome to Real World Experiences, an event where we'll define and discuss our experiences of shifting COBOL compute workload off the mainframe. This partnership between GFT and CloudFrame may be something new. Maybe you haven't noticed that we've done that. So to make that announcement and kind of go over where we've come from in this partnership, I'd like to introduce Pedro Piquer, who's our VP of Sales at CloudFrame, and Alpesh Taylor of GFT, who's the head of their cloud and banking solutions group. So Alpesh and Pedro, why don't you take us through a little bit about why we've chose the partnership and what that value, what benefit and value that brings to our customers.
Sure, Alpesh, would you like to go?
Thank you, David, and thank you, Pedro. Thank you also, CloudFrame, for hosting the session today and for allowing GFT to participate. So GFT have been in industry for many years, many decades now, over 35 years, and our strong value proposition really has been to work at the forefront of disruptive technology and work at the forefront of the most complex challenging customer problems. And so for GFT, when we look at the customer angle and we see the customer problem, we always want to apply a best of breed solution to that problem. And when we came across the CloudFrame offering a few years ago and the conversations with Pedro, it was very clear that there was a disruptive technology that was changing the market. And for GFT, the importance of building the offering and building the partnership with CloudFrame was to bring our customers that value. So for me, it's a great pleasure to have spent the past few years building this partnership with GFT and with CloudFrame, and are looking forward to taking it further and generating even more customer success.
Thanks, Alpesh. I'd like to highlight that while the announcement is new, we have been working together for well over a year. And the strengths that brought us together were really GFT's unparalleled delivery excellence, right? Coupled with CloudFrame's world-class COBOL to Java transformation really allows customers to decrease the risk with regard to, mainframe modernization. And so, this is very much a scenario in which GFT plus CloudFrame is significant value, lower risk, and more immediate results for customers as they pursue their modernization initiatives.
Our CEO, Marika Lula, I'd like to thank CloudFrame as well. Obviously, we've made this announcement in the marketplace. For GFT, building strategic partnerships is of utmost importance, and building strategic partnerships for the value of our customers is of great paramount importance to us as well. So thank you.
And from our perspective, Venkat Pillai, who's our CEO and founder, is very focused on CloudFrame as a software solution company. And so partnerships with strategic partners like GFT allow us to, again, provide delivery excellence to our customers as they pursue their modernization initiatives and decrease the time to value.
Excellent. You guys mentioned that even though we've just recently made the announcement of the partnership between the two organizations, we've been working together for quite some time, specifically on some solutions that are around shifting COBOL compute. And so I want to get into the definition of that and what that means. A lot of times, I just assume sometimes when I say shifting COBOL compute that people understand what that is and how we go about doing that. But we're going to go a little bit into how we accomplish that and use as a reference some of the projects that we've been using. So to take us through that, our field sales director, George Morlet's going to go over, the background around the solution of shifting COBOL compute, which is based on one of the CloudFrame products. We're going to see how that's delivered and give a little bit of background so that we kind of set the stage and the context to what the solution is before we get into talking about our real world experiences. So George, if you will, take us through what we mean by shifting COBOL compute. I'm going to direct the slide, so you'll have to give me a little bit of a nod when you want me to change, but I think we can get through it pretty quickly. Go ahead, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Can you hear me well?
We've got you.
Awesome. So let's take the next slide, please, and let me start by explaining a little bit the concept. And just reading as is right now, the compute or execution of a COBOL program can be shifted to another platform, typically to a less expensive platform. How is that possible? How can you shift a COBOL program to a less expensive platform? Well, basically using a technique that is called or known as cross-compile. Cross-compile will allow you to basically take your code, and I'm going to go off of camera because I want to make sure that my audio is to the best quality possible.
Yeah.
So cross-compiling is a process of compiling for a target platform. Okay, you have a COBOL program that you cross-compile in another language that is going to run in the target platform as native language. And this is going to allow you to keep controlling the execution as if it was COBOL, but underneath, under the hood, is running as another language. In this case, we're targeting as Java because Java is very portable, and even the mainframe itself does have the capacity to execute Java within the same platform itself. So the mainframe does have two types of processors, and the C processors are way less expensive than the GPPs. So you can shift your compute to the SIP CPUs, but you can also shift your compute to other even less expensive platforms like the cloud itself. So that's the concept. That's how the relocate solution works, relocate CloudFrame solution works. And this is going to take you to what? And thank you for the next slide, David. This is going to take you to cost reductions. We've seen that in the market, there's a continuous increase of the costs of having your operations running on these kind of platforms, particularly mainframes. The US increased the price on 2023 by 8%. Other countries, they went even bigger to percentages of like 15%. And this is a thing that customers are very concerned about, and they want to find ways to reduce that cost, but in a controlled manner without any risks. So there's a need to control this, but not having any risks. How do we do that? Can you take the next one, please, for me? So the first thing is we need to take in consideration what is it going to be the financial impact of doing this COBOL shifting. There's a lot of things that we need and factors that we need to take in consideration, like the labor of the migration process. If you do a manual migration, what is it going to be the impact of that? Okay. If you're going to replace the infrastructure that you have or use another part of the infrastructure of your same mainframe, also you need to take in consideration that you're going to consume less of X resources, but maybe a little bit more of Y resources. What are those resources? Like, for example, could be the consumption of the DB2 accesses. Okay, so that's a thing that we need to eventually take in consideration and go back and check what is it going to be that impact. Now, another factor could be, an additional software licenses or the reduction of other existing licenses, like I don't know, source or other techniques that you continually use in your mainframe. You can reduce that as well. So there's going to be direct and indirect impact that you need to take in consideration during your exercise. Okay, but one of the most important things, and I already mentioned, is reduce the risk. If you're starting by do this cross compilation, you're going to reduce the risk because you will be able to control by a single COBOL module what is that you want to start migrating, what is that you want to start cross compiling and shifting, and then you control the blast radius of the impact of this change, and then you can decide when and how you want to start this modernization and keep full control of that. Okay. And of course, we know that there's a momentum in the modernization. There's a lot of companies working on that, but one of the biggest problems that they face is the funding. And if you have a good strategy, you can do a self-funded modernization that will allow you gather and start creating fundings with this shift in the COBOL compute to go to a real full modernization process. Can we take the next one, please? So how is that you want to run your process? Well, the most important thing is know where is that you want to get into. So define your success criteria and tell, oh, this is what I want to get into, and this is how I'm going to get into that. And the process requires you to make an analysis And the analysis is my strong recommendation is try not to go very ambitious. If you go very ambitious with the initial process, you could get into trouble. So try to do a very controllable process of modernization or of shifting the computer initially. Okay. As you have your success criteria, you know what is that you want to pursue. Typically, this success criteria is going to be you want to pursue having, for example, a functional equivalency. You want to pursue, for example, having a demonstration that the data can be accessed from both sides. Okay, that's the kind of things that you want to make sure you have. When you know what is that you want to achieve, then you can prepare the baseline, which is the initial scenario. What is going to happen with your process when you run usually your daily process? Then take a picture of that. Have a status or a state which you can return into every time you want to do a test, because you're going to be testing a few times until you ensure that you have the functional equivalency. Okay, but the most important thing is all the financial impact that you made an analysis in previously. Make sure that you can justify that and have a strong business case that you can project, because you're going to do kind of a mock-up scenario with these success criteria that you want to be able to project to go big and then justify a full rollout of the process. Okay, can we hit the next one, please, David? So how do you prepare a business case? Make sure that you know first what is your strategic context. Where are you at and where do you want to go? Okay. Make sure that you do a complete economic analysis, comparing what is it going to happen if I do nothing against I do a manual process or against I do an automatic shift computing. If I do an automated shift computing, how much is that going to cost? So do good projections so you know where is that you're going to get in terms of expectations, economical expectations, of course. Then take a look on what your obstacles could be. Okay, lack of resources that you may have could be obstacles like I don't have enough time, I don't have enough interest from the stakeholders, I don't have enough money. Then the self-funding strategy could be very strong, or create the interest from the stakeholders. This is very important. Make sure that you have a strategic goal. Most companies, they have a compelling event. Could be the increase of the value or the cost of this technology. Could be another trigger like a business need that is right in front of us because of a regulatory impact or something like that. So make sure that this strategic goal is very clear and you know exactly what is the compelling event that is forcing you to take this step. Okay. And then also make sure that you're taking control of the risks. Okay, what is going to be the operational impact? Who's going to be doing this process? Do they have the availability? Will they be able to manage the new technologies properly? All of that. And of course, the business impact, because everything turns back into money, right? And in the end, when you have all these taken in consideration, you can take a look at the big picture and then make the definition and the decision of going to run the process. Okay, and this is taking us to the next slide, please. So the first thing of the process is you need to find the good candidates for doing the shifting. Not necessarily every application is going to be a very good candidate, because what you're going to be targeting is a new environment, and that new environment and the target platform, it works differently. You have now in your environment running a object-oriented architecture. Maybe you want to make it run as a microservices or event-driven, and your application has been running for 40 years, not in that mode. You've been running like spaghetti code, and you want to create a different layered architecture, which is going to be more powerful, more easy to manage. Well, then you also need to take in consideration that kind of objectives as you're doing the selection of the right candidate. And I'll go deeper a little on that. But the most important thing, and I already mentioned, get a solid business case. Make sure that you have a low risk, and make sure that you're going to have and find the lower hanging fruit. And that is going to give you very good results. That is going to give you the capacity to demonstrate that you are in the right track, and to demonstrate that you can roll this out big and get the big savings that the company is expecting. Okay, can we take the next one, please? So selecting the good candidate in a technical way, it's making sure that you have this any of these types of applications. Either you have an application that is doing sequential access to sequential files in and getting a single read in a sequential way and not in a dynamic way, because then you're going to be able to take advantage of the Java processing. The less you have a chatty application, not having to read that much the data, the better. That works very well with sequential files when you can allocate the files in the new target environment, or when you can do prefetch. So prefetch is very, very important. So you can concentrate on the compute and do less inputs and outputs processes. Similarly with the type 2, which is when you're accessing databases, you want to access via cursor, because then you're going to have control and the readings are going to be reduced. And you can output that back to the tables, or you can output the result to a sequential file. That's going to work very well. So, and type 3, it's a combination of both. But in the end, what we're after is trying to find the candidates that are using the batch process in the best possible way to do a batch, which is you receive data, then you process a lot of data, then you output data. The less interaction that you need to do with the inputs and outputs, the better. Okay, next one, please. So how do we do the process? Just next one, please. The process basically, it's you need to establish a success criteria. Okay, and I already mentioned that don't go very ambitious. Just try to make sure that you are gonna get the functional equivalency, that you're gonna get the same process executed. You know, the less ambitious, the better. The more controlled environment you have, the better. Okay, and then when you are executing the test, make sure that you have automation. Okay, and I'm putting this diagram at the top right because I want you to understand, and I'm going to go a little deeper later in the next slide, but I want you to understand that automation is key. Okay, when you have your baseline already executed in your original environment, as you're going to be running as COBOL, you want to be able to reproduce that environment and that state. So if you automatically cross-compile and then run as Java, you can compare the results and repeat if something is not okay. Okay, so there could be test variations. Yes, that's why we want this to be repeatable, and that's why the automation is key, because this is going to reduce those little errors that we need to fix. Then analyze the results, not only in terms of getting the functional equivalency, but also in terms of making sure that you're getting really real benefits. Okay, and those real benefits, which is the analysis that we have on the bottom right, are going to take you to make a projection on the total savings that you're going to have. As you can see in this analysis, we have the initial state, which is COBOL running on the GPPs and generating some elapsed time of almost 22 seconds. And then on the second execution, which is running as Java, you'll see that the GPPs was reduced to almost 0, and the Java zips consume pretty much all the time, and the elapsed time is now 43 seconds, right? Yeah, maybe the elapsed time went up a little, but look at the savings. You're offloading 69% of the GPPs to the zip CPUs, and that could take you to make an analysis on, is this what we want? Are those saving enough? Well, you may have to go to understand then your licensing model, and based on your licensing model, make a projection on what is going to be the total savings that you're going to get out of this process in particular. Can you take the next one, please? So I think I already described a little of the process. It's very simple. The process is you have your as is situation, step number 1, bottom left. And then step number 2, you can use the CloudFrame panels to generate the migration JCL. The migration JCL is the one that it's going to create the Java code. Okay, so in step number 4 is when you have your Java code, then you can execute again in step number 5, but this time you're going to be executing as Java. And then step number 6 is to compare the results. That process is repeatable because step number 2, 3, and 4, those are fully automated, and that is going to save you a lot of time. Can we take the next one, please, David? So already mentioned, after you get your numbers, because you run your test already, you know what is going to be the offloading percentage that you have now running from your GPPs into the SIP CPUs, and then you need to make a projection. Okay, make sure that you talk to the people who knows what is the costs and how this is accounted internally. Make sure that you understand how your billing it's negotiated with IBM. You can have the rolling 4-hour average. You can have the any one you have. Okay, but the most important thing is you can account for how much MSUs you're reducing, which is also going to positively impact your MLCs, and also make sure that you have the capacity to increase your other resources in which you're going to be shifting your computing to, like increase the SIP CPU's capacity or have enough cloud capacity, whatever is going to be your target environment. Make sure that you are going to be able to land in there properly. I think that's it, right, David? On the explanation of product.
That's good. Thank you, George, for taking us through that. It seems like shifting COBOL compute is pretty straightforward. We start with our COBOL programs that we'd like to move. We go through some analysis of that, figure out what those test cases are and how to validate those things, create a business case, and then execute the shift, which means moving it off to a less expensive platform, the cloud, or the case that we referenced here was Zip. So I think that that's pretty straightforward. Now, CloudFrame and GFT have actually been involved with several projects that involve shifting COBOL compute. And to go through some of these real-world experiences, we're going to have two new panelists join us. Antonio and Mauricio, I'd like for you to come on now, and maybe you can introduce yourself. George, if you want to keep your camera on, we'll be going through these questions here. That way people can connect with us here. But Mauricio, Antonio, will you introduce yourself and maybe talk about how you've become involved with the CloudFrame products that we're using on these projects?
After you, Mauricio, after you.
Thank you. So great to be with all of you today, and thank you again, CloudFrame, for putting this together and for making us participate as well. So I'm Mauricio Deutsch, and I'm leading the GFT banking and capital markets here in Canada, and I've been working in most of my professional life in consulting around financial services, and mostly with banks. So I've been having a lot of interactions with the banks here in the country, because there's a lot of concern about the current situation of the infrastructure and the current costs, and what the plans look for what's coming here into the market in terms of flexibility, in terms of modernization. So this has become a very hot topic, and CloudFrame has been a part of this discussion because of the flexibility and because of the benefits that it can provide in terms of what we've been hearing from George and from the rest of the team here. And I will tell you a little bit more of my experiences with some of the clients that I've been trying to get involved with in this kind of things. But I think that the modernization agenda and the cost reduction agenda are a very key part of what CloudFrame is bringing to the market. Antonio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mauricio. Hi all, Antonio Gramont, Tony. I'm in GFT since 2019, working in the organization of mainframe efficiency, and this is going to lead the reasons why we are involved in CloudFrame operations. I've been in this industry for about probably 30 long years, and I'd say that my alma mater is IBM, where I've been developing different positions during 23 years, right? In the areas of software, and my technical background, it's mainframe. But in IBM, I've been involved in different operations, different positions in worldwide, and as well as in EMEA, right? So the reasons I'm here is it's because mainframe efficiency it's a core, it's a team, it's an offering in GFT which is specialized in improving the performance of the mainframes, right? In that we have different methodologies in order to do so, and well, it came to our let's say advice to talk with CloudFrame about how we could perform better and how we could help customers in order to improve not just the efficiency, but also engaging in some different ways to modernize their applications, right? Well, this is where we are talking with CloudFrame since 2 years ago, engaged in different opportunities and bringing the customers not just to a better business case regarding the bills to IBM, but also giving them the chance to improve and to start modernizing their application toward Java in order to have them move forward in a new technology and a new future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for those introductions and a little bit of background. I want to get into a little bit of our experiences here. And I really have, kind of three major areas: project planning, project delivery, and then project analysis. And so if we talked about our experiences, maybe we could put that in the context of what we've been involved in. Primarily, this has been large financial institutions that are really running mission critical. I mean, the very essence of mission critical applications that are very important to their business, but are, kind of surmounting a lot of fees and costs associated with running in the mainframe. So as we went through the project planning phase of this, Mauricio, maybe you can talk to, putting that business case together and convincing management, our clients' management teams, that this is actually an approach to reducing the cost of mainframe and moving this off is a good plan for them. How would you go about, making that case to management if people were faced with that? Maybe you can share your experiences there.
Yeah, and a lot of what we've heard today, and it's of course about cost reduction, but sometimes it's not only about cost reduction per se, because there's a lot of things around cost reduction that I can talk about. But one of the main things that we have talking to the clients is how should we be approaching this type of engagement, and it summarizes in terms of deciding if I go renovate or I go relocate, right? If I directly go to going to the cloud, or first start to think about moving COBOL to Java within the mainframe. And this has different sides of the conversation we have with clients, because turning COBOL into Java within the mainframe does not mean that you have to change the skills that you have in place, or that you are having your development team change the whole skill set that they have, right? So this brings also the human side of things that has to be taken into account. So sometimes clients have to want to go initially to renovate, because that would allow them to actually start receiving the benefits of cost reduction directly. And those benefits will sometimes be allocated to their long-term renovation or long-term modernization plans that they have. So this cost reduction is per se a benefit, but also can free some resources to do some of the modernization projects that they want to do as well. And if you go to relocate directly, that of course that's an option as well that can bring those benefits. And also one other thing that is important that we have been successful in convincing the clients is that we are adopting a proof of concept approach initially, right? So the proof of concept approach brings some assurance, a lot of certainty about how this is going to be in real life once you apply it in a more bigger scale than just a POC. So it's a smaller investment. It's a starting point that shows the organization the real benefits and the process, how it works. And so it's very important to choose what batch processes will be done through the POC, because it has to be really something that would have the different scenarios or different cases that might appear in the whole architecture. But the POC approach also has a lot of success when you're talking to management to make sure that the investment they are going to do will bring the benefits that we are talking about in a PowerPoint presentation, right?
Great. So to summarize that, maybe it's, reduce the cost, but also take a look to ensure that you're reducing the risk by not disrupting, the current environments that you have there. And then really it's an incremental approach. It's not going out after a big bang. You're not having to change everything at the same time, so you can do these POCs, move into a pilot, take one application at a time, and that therefore kind of reduces your risk. As we say at CloudFrame, we call that reducing the blast radius of change. That's an old term that we throw about a lot. So thanks for filling us in on going to management, trying to make that case of how you would do it. Part of that case would be the business case. And Antonio, maybe you can speak to that, of putting together a compelling business case that details what the impact of shifting COBOL compute would be.
Yeah, sure. Well, in fact, the elements are diverse, obviously, but they're very much related to aspects like the cost of doing nothing or staying put. It should be not forgotten that IT must be able to support the growth initiatives of the business units, right? So to support, to help, and to improve them. The failure not to do so in a world of constantly increasing competitiveness, but also a reduction on the costs, it can mean that irreparable loss of competitiveness and the advantage of the business units, especially in medium term. Therefore, aspects like cost reduction, cost go-to-market capability, evolution from IT evolution, and IT ability to contribute to corporate success are really important business aspects when you are estimating to have this kind of project, right? Essentially, estimate the cost of non-quality or of not modernizing your application. It can also make loss the benefits of having a new technology in your IT. Let's mind that IT, when we undertake the mainframe infrastructure, world, we are talking about programs that they are, let me give the blood, they are the essential of this company that has been created for many years, right? So we need to ensure, as Mauricio said, that we are going to improve, we are going to modernize, but without disrupting the business, right? So these are essential elements when we talk with the customers and we understand how the customers feel about their mainframe.
Right. So thanks for taking us through that. I think if I could recap, there are some tangible pieces of the business case. Obviously, the cost reduction, the cost of not doing anything and addressing the problems, but there are also intangibles, right? The ability to move forward, have the ability to innovate and respond to competitive pressures, that type of thing, the ability to move IT in the right direction. So I think those are relevant into the business case. I want to move on maybe to something that's going to be a little bit more in depth with George. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, George, about choosing the right application. We had a slide there that talked about some of that. So I want to make sure that we circle back and really, put a pin in that as far as how important it is to make sure that you're initiating a project like this, that you get off to a good start by concentrating on picking the best application. So maybe you can give us some of your experiences there and what we've been through with GFT and the projects that we've been through.
Oh yeah, now that you mentioned in talking about experiences, it is amazing the level of knowledge that the application owners they have on these kind of platforms. They've been running the same or very similar operations for I don't know, 30, 40, even sometimes 50 years. So the knowledge that they have, it's something that is very useful. I've seen customers that we approach and they immediately can tell you, oh, this is the biggest pain I have, or this is the one that is consuming more in here and I shouldn't. And sometimes they have the main change of the operation running in the batch process overnight, and they know that after, maybe the first 50 or 60% of the execution, they're almost done with the important thing. Then after that, they need to do closings, they need to do reporting, they need to do a lot of processes that they can eventually be decoupled. These application owners, they've given us a very useful feedback on where to go and how to start. And these applications that are, or parts of the applications that are easy to decouple, are the best possible candidates for starting on this analysis. So like end of day process or end of month, I've seen a customer that they had all of the processes or transactions under $1,500. They need to be processed in a different way than others. They have a month end that consumes all of the GDGs, and every month end, that particular day, that particular night, they have the mainframe to the top every time. They're offloading this month end process by copying the GDGs, the 30 days to somewhere else, run that outside, take the information back. They saved a lot of money. So in my experience, nothing like the application owners to help us finding these good applications and get the savings, finding the low-hanging fruits very easily.
Right. Thanks, George. So in project planning, I think, what we want to emphasize here is, establish a good business case, go back and have evidence that you can convince management that this is something that you need to move forward with, having a good application example there where it's reduced risk, very little reduction of disruption is going to make it very amenable to management to move forward. It's going to get a great test bed for you to prove that shifting COBOL compute can have an impact. When we get into delivery, though, it's a little bit different. Now the rubber is meeting the road. We've got to actually go do it. And I think we've got some great experiences here. And I want to start off with, the train wreck. Everybody wants to see that. So the mistakes that are made. And so, George, I'd like for you to primarily kick that off, but also I'd like to hear from Antonio, maybe some analysis on that. I want to be mindful also of the clock. We've been on for 30 some odd minutes, and we're gonna go through this. So maybe 2-3 minutes that we can go through delivery on this, and we'll start with mistakes, and then we'll go obviously to lessons learned. But George, if you could kick us off, Antonio and Mauricio, if you could come in after that, and maybe share some of your experiences.
Oh, yes, thank you, David. So one of the most common mistakes that I've seen, and I've already mentioned 100 times, pick the right candidate. If you don't do that, you'll impact everything, right? Second one is, and I think I mentioned that as well, don't go very ambitious. Consider that you're going to test something. So you want to find the good application and have a controlled environment. If you don't have a controlled environment, you will not be able to have a good projection of the savings. And another common mistake is that managers, they think that things are easy, and they think that they can do manual stuff of for example, greenfielding an application, and then they go on and they realize that, and this is a very, very common thing that I've seen, believing that rewriting a program is going to take maybe 3 months, and it's 6 months, and they're not even a quarter of the conversion. Why is this happening? Because the programs were developed 40 years ago, and there was a reason why they made all this spaghetti so complex. And untangling all this is not a thing that can be done by just one single person. You need to have that knowledge, understand what happened in the, and maybe known a little bit of the history of the application itself as well. So it's not just understanding the code and reproducing that functionality. It's much more than that. That is a very common mistake that I've seen.
Yeah, Antonio, can you add to that?
Totally agree with George regarding the aspect. I used to get the analogy. It's not a meat grinder. Okay, you need to carefully analyze what are your expectation about this, how you are going to get the higher advantage on this transformation. Okay, it's true. Sometimes there is spaghetti, but even sometimes there are no spaghetti. But the way that a COBOL program is programmed regarding Java. It's something different, right? So you need to understand how you are going to have this maximum advantage in order to get, a feasible profit. Let's talk in a very short time. All right.
Mhm.
So they are not processes like, we started, as Jorge said, 3 or 4 months coding, testing, UAT, etc. Right? And we need to be clearly able to understand which are the limits and to get the advantage, which is something very good in CloudFrame in a very, very, very short time, right? Comparatively with rewriting applications, something really, really fast, right?
Right.
So I totally support his statements, all right, on that.
Right. Mauricio, anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, one thing that happens a lot in the delivery of this type of engagements is that, and George mentioned it, the people that are there are key, because most of the time you don't find any documentation about the application. So you are relying on the people that have the knowledge most of the time in their heads. And that's a key factor of success, to really have these people engaged, have these people involved, and really supporting this kind of thing. Because if not, there's no documentation to go through in order to know what's the structure. So, yeah.
Great. So around that, I think maybe Antonio, you mentioned this around project duration. My sense has always been the shorter projects, the better. If we can prove it in a week, why would we take a month? Exposing longer durations brings more cost and more risk. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, totally agree on that. Totally agree. And furthermore, what Mauricio said, it's absolutely true, in the sense that even someone say that this is not. To rewrite it's not easy. It's not easy. You need to think that we are sitting and try to understand a program, which is the analysis, is the all information that has been gathered, and the company runs with that. Okay, so I totally agree on what Mauricio said, and effectively the timing in order to start, the transformation, it's much shorter. So it means that it's more feasible, and which is very important from the point of view of mainframe, people feel CIOs, and they feel more comfortable knowing that it's going to move to the Java, but without disrupting the system, right? Which is at the end the most important part.
Right. Great. So we've spent a little bit about planning. We've talked a little bit about delivery with mistakes and lessons learned and project durations. And now I want to maybe talk about analysis. And Mauricio, maybe you can talk about this for a second. How do we measure success in these types of projects? As we're putting these things together, we're obviously planning and executing them, but after the fact, we need to sit down and figure out whether we've met our goals or not. Maybe you can talk to that.
Well, the easy side of this is actually numbers, and we saw some of what George was showing us, and the bill goes down, and that's the easy, let's say, KPIs. But we also talked about intangibles and how flexible we become around new developments, new products that the bank, for example, wants to, how much time it takes now to develop those, and to make sure that the time to market is also part of the benefits, the flexibility in terms of how agile we become in being able to cope with customers' demands. So there's a lot of intangibles that are related to the cost reduction, and how also this amount of money that is you're not spending anymore, how you allocate that money, what's the best usage of this money that you are not having to spend anymore, if it's just reducing the cost and reflecting that in a P&L, or making sure that you do have the best use of that money for other things that might help you to grow and to develop some of the things you have not been able to do before.
Great. So Antonio, maybe take that and put it into the context of project costs and what you're investing versus what typically people would measure, which would be return on investment, but also roll that into total cost of ownership. I think that's an interesting kind of three-way view of that.
They are at the end. Everything should be related to the how the solution is going to take. But okay, the numbers are there. Okay, we can achieve a very strong reductions on the bill, right? On the bill, on the use of the bill for using CP processors. This is true. But although the return of investment concept is commonly known, I will also like to point to additional factors, okay, that always are, I mean, I think they are important. Well, the first is the TTV, it's this time to value, right? Which means it's the length of time necessary to finish a project, right? And the outcome, the long-hanging fruit, they're really in the short term, which is very important. So TTV, it's also an important aspect, right? And the other, which is it's the aspect which is related to the this is a PMI information related. It's a TCPI, which is the time to complete performance index. In other words, these projects are highly predictable, can be achieved with very little deviations. All of this because they are automatic. Okay, they are technological and not functional transformations, so non-functional implications. Thus, rather few human interactions. Okay, from my point of view, in addition to TCO and the ROI, these are indirectly thought very related to the financial impact that can be obtained from the CloudFrame solution implementations.
Great. Thanks for taking us through that planning, delivery, and analysis after the project. We've kind of come to the end of that kind of questioning. And what I wanted to do is open it up to audience questions. I see some questions out here, one of which is always recurring, which is to talk about the data. So maybe, George, you can pick that up and tell us about how data plays into shifting COBOL compute projects.
Oh, that's a great question. We get that a lot. And it is very important to mention, as we are cross-compiling and we're trying to get the less impact possible with the relocate solution that we have, we are allowing the customer not to move the data from the source. So we can access the most standard storage formats like DB2s, like the VSOM files, QSOM files, all of the sequential type of files without actually having to do any change on the data strategy, as they are just running in Java, the same process. We have a way to take care of runtime that is going to be taking care of all this interaction, and that is very important. Also important to mention, we're encouraging the customers to keep maintaining the COBOL. The cross-compile is a thing that is fully automated. The solution takes control of that and ensures that the execution is going to run seamlessly every time. So we are encouraging for them to continue maintaining in COBOL and not as Java.
Great. So that brings in less disruption, less changes to the environment.
To the organization, correct.
All right. So data-wise, we don't have any requirements in these types of projects to do any type of data migration or data changes. In fact, we want the data to stay where it is. We talked about...
However, David, I'd like to just bring up one point, which is many customers have replicated their data to the cloud or to another, and created data lakes. And so, and are still running the compute on the mainframe, right? This is also an opportunity to leverage CloudFrame and reduce cost and reduce GPP, right? And so what we see is, a significant reduction is in addition to the efforts when customers have already moved their data. And in fact, it makes the project even easier, right? So back to you, David.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Pedro. Thanks for giving us that different perspective on the data. One of the questions that comes up is around the COBOL, the Java that's generated from the COBOL. I believe in the examples that we're talking about here in the projects, we're not opening that Java for the ability to maintain that Java. George, maybe you can talk about that from the standpoint of the cross-compile generates what type of Java code? I think the word is bytecode.
It is plain Java classes that are not meant to be maintainable. This is not formatted for developers to basically be able and manage from there. It is stored somewhere. It can be seen, but we strongly recommend not to maintain that.
So why is that, George? Is it because it's formatted for performance versus maintainability?
That's exactly right. We're much more concerned about giving the customer the best, reduce the consumption of resources, accesses to tables, accesses to all of that is optimized, and we're not beautifying the code. We do that beautification when we give the customers the renovate solution that is going to run completely off of the mainframe.
Great. So that goes back to performance, and maybe Antonio or Mauricio, you can give us a little bit of insight there around, what's critical for performance around these applications. We saw in the data that George showed us, there was a little bit of more elapsed time for the Java execution on the zip. Is that important to clients to manage that, or is there a trade-off that you see?
All right. Yeah. When we undertake these kind of projects, this is very important to understand which industry we are talking about, okay, and which process we are going to be under. And some processes, lots of times, are not so important, right? Because they are online transaction processing or whatever. And some others, where we are, especially industries like, for instance, banking and some. Cards and stuff like this. These can be important. Then we need a fine tuning about how the data is established, and it complements with the area that we have in GFT of mainframe efficiency, in order to fine tuning everything in the right way, in order to have this data. All of you know that how important can be to keep the batch windows in a bank, right? So we take care of this, and that obviously there is we have in GFT we have around 43 methodological approach in order to optimize the mainframes performance, and some of them they're really linked to the way that some of the transformers are going to access the data, right?
Yeah.
And if may I just add some comment on top of Tony's, it is very important to mention GFT has been doing this for years. They already have developed some very strong techniques to do the optimization, and they are improving a little or changing a little that methodology based on our product, because since we have this automation, then part of that can be automated, and there's going to be some new things that they need to add to that list and new techniques that they're applying. So improving the process elapsed time, or improving the entire performance of the application, it's something that GFT is very specialist on, and they've been doing for a long time.
And if I may, just 30 seconds, it's also the efficiency is also paired with less disruption. We've mentioned it from the human side, from the technology side, from the data side, and also for the business. So the disruption part is very important, that there's the minimal disruption in this kind of experiences that we have had.
Great. Thanks, guys. Well, we've gone a little bit over time. We were a couple of minutes over, so I appreciate everybody hanging out with us and staying to the end here. I want to make sure that if you have any questions, that I've got those. I'll be in contact with you to make sure that we answer them. But I want to thank our panelists today from both CloudFrame and GFT. It's exciting to have a partnership where we're actually engaged in making a difference in a lot of our customers' lives and the IT environments that they have. Cost is obviously paramount. All of us have budgets, and all of us have to deal with those types of things. And anything that we can do to give some relief there is what I think is the first step of the modernization journey. So GFT panelists, Alpesh and Antonio, Mauricio, thank you very much for joining us today. George, thank you for taking us through what Shift COBOL Compute looks like. Pedro, thanks for bringing your expertise in as well. And I want to thank everybody that attended and participated. So have a great afternoon, and let's go modernize. Take care, guys.
Thanks all. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.